I never expected her to remember my name, let alone the way I took my coffee. Every Thursday evening, after work, I stopped by the small neighborhood cafe near my friend Daniel's house. It wasn't special, just warm yellow lights, mismatched chairs, and a coffee machine that hissed louder than the conversations around it. I usually sat by the window, pretending to scroll through my phone while watching people walk past like they belonged somewhere important. That's where I first started noticing her. She sat 2 tables away, almost every week. Always alone. Always calm. Mid-40s, maybe older, with soft brown hair pulled loosely behind her neck and a quiet confidence that didn't try to impress anyone. She read real books, the kind with worn pages and folded corners. The first time we spoke wasn't memorable. I dropped a sugar packet, and it slid under her chair. "Sorry," I muttered, crouching awkwardly. She picked it up before I could. "You always sit here," she said casually, handing it back. "Window seat. Black coffee. No sugar." I blinked. "You noticed that?" She smiled faintly. "People reveal a lot through routine." I laughed, but something about it stayed with me longer than it should have. After that, we started exchanging small conversations. Nothing heavy, just fragments. "How was work?" "Long." "You look tired." "I probably am." Her voice was calm, steady, the kind that made silence feel comfortable instead of awkward. She never rushed conversations. Sometimes we'd sit there saying nothing, just sharing the background noise of spoons clinking and espresso steaming. I told myself she reminded me of stability. That was the safe explanation. The truth was, I looked forward to Thursdays more than anything else in my week. My phone stayed mostly quiet these days. Old group chats faded, messages typed and deleted. Sometimes I opened conversations just to reread them, wondering when people stopped needing me around. Loneliness didn't arrive loudly. It settled into habits. Eating dinner while standing. Watching videos without hearing them. Going to sleep with unfinished thoughts. But when she was there, the quiet felt different. One evening, I arrived late and didn't see her at first. I felt an unexpected disappointment tighten in my chest. I ordered my coffee anyway and sat down, pretending it didn't matter. Then she appeared beside my table. "You almost missed me," she said. I looked up surprised. She was closer than usual, the faint scent of jasmine following her. She set her book down across from me without asking permission. "Rough day?" she asked. Something like that. She studied my face, not intensely, just carefully, like she was reading something written between my expressions. "You think too much," she said gently. I shrugged. "Someone has to." She laughed softly, folding her napkin into precise squares while we talked. I noticed her hands, steady, elegant, a simple ring catching the light. My eyes lingered a second too long before I looked away. There was nothing inappropriate about our conversations. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. She mentioned her son sometimes, Daniel, my friend since college, which made everything feel harmless, safe, almost accidental. But small moments started stacking up. The way her eyes stayed on mine a little longer when I joked. The way she remembered details I barely remembered telling her. The way she said my name slowly, like it meant something. That night, as the cafe began closing, we walked outside together. The air was cool, quiet. Streetlights reflected off parked cars. "Well," she said, adjusting her coat, "I suppose I'll see you next Thursday." "Yeah," I replied, though I suddenly didn't want the conversation to end. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she stepped closer and brushed imaginary lint from my sleeve, an unnecessary gesture that made my breath stall. "Take care of yourself," she said softly. I watched her walk away, telling myself I was overthinking everything. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. A new message. Unknown number. "I hope you got home safely. Daniel's mom." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then another message appeared. "Would you like to come over sometime when Daniel isn't home?" I didn't reply to her text right away. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the screen, imagining what it would mean if I actually said yes. My mind spun, full of what-ifs and warnings. Daniel's mom. Mid-40s. Divorced. Someone's parent. Forbidden, complicated, and entirely off limits. And yet, every fiber of me wanted it. When I finally arrived at her house the next evening, she greeted me at the door with the kind of smile that made all my hesitation crumble. The smell of baked bread and faint vanilla perfume hit me immediately, familiar and warm. "I thought you might come," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. The living room was quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled with words. She motioned toward the couch. "Tea?" she asked, her hand hovering over a small kettle. I nodded, grateful for the distraction. As she poured, I noticed the subtle lines around her eyes, the way she always tucked her hair behind her ear with careful deliberation. "I haven't always lived in this neighborhood," she said, almost to herself. "Moved here after the divorce. Thought it would be quieter, easier to start over." I nodded, unsure what to say, so she continued. "I spent a lot of years putting everyone else first. My kids, my job. It's strange how quiet you can become when you're only living for others." Her gaze met mine for just a second, sharp and real, then softened. I felt something tighten in my chest. I wanted to say that I understood, but even in my 20s, I didn't. I only knew the hollow ache of being unseen, of sitting alone on Thursday nights, watching life pass by through cafe windows. We talked in small bursts, interrupted by silence, by the pouring of tea, by a clink of spoons against delicate china. The air felt heavier, charged in a way I wasn't ready to name. I kept imagining Daniel coming home early, the awkwardness, the impossible betrayal, but those thoughts were quickly eclipsed by the sight of her, the way her hand rested on the table, the way her voice softened when she spoke. At one point, she asked me to help move a stack of books from the counter. Our fingers brushed over the spines, a fleeting, almost accidental touch that sent a shiver up my arm. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked. She glanced at me, eyebrow raised, and smiled knowingly. We ended up sitting on the couch afterward, the silence stretching long enough for me to wonder if she felt it too, the tension, the magnetic pull, the dangerous intimacy of proximity. She didn't move, just looked at me with a soft, half smile, like she was waiting for something unspoken. Finally, she reached out and adjusted the collar of my shirt, her fingers brushing my neck. It was small, innocent enough on the surface, but I felt my heart hammer. I wanted to close the distance, to say the words I knew I shouldn't, yet couldn't stop thinking about. I caught her eyes again, steady and warm, and something unspoken passed between us. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next few Thursdays were different. I found myself looking forward to her messages, but when they came, my pulse raced, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, unsure what to type. Every response felt like a test I wasn't ready to pass. That night, she was waiting on her porch when I arrived, a steaming mug in hand. "Thought you might need this," she said, her eyes flicking to mine just long enough to make me self-conscious. I nodded, taking it, trying not to notice how her fingers lingered over mine for a split second. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and something richer. Books, polished wood, faint perfume. She motioned for me to sit, but I could feel her hesitation, subtle, a tiny stiffening in her posture. I tried to read her, wanted to know if she really wanted me here, or if this was a fleeting whim she'd regret. We settled on the couch, a little closer than usual. I kept my hands folded in my lap, aware of the space between us, aware of how small gestures suddenly carried weight. She offered me tea, and when I accepted, she lingered over the kettle longer than necessary, as if she needed the pause to steady herself. Her glance met mine as she sat down again. Quiet. A pause. A smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I meant to tell you," she trailed off. Her words stumbled, and I waited, heart tightening. Then the interruption came, Daniel's laugh from the street. He'd come home early, backpack swinging, oblivious to the storm of tension in the living room. Her posture shifted immediately, shoulders tightening, back straightening. "I'll be right back," she said, almost too quickly, disappearing toward the kitchen. I sipped my tea, trying to calm the sudden rush of adrenaline. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the sound of her chopping something in the kitchen, the occasional clink of utensils. I kept imagining all the ways this could go wrong. Daniel walking in, a phone buzzing, A wrong word. Every little sound made me jump. When she returned, she set a plate in front of me and sat down again, just far enough that my knee didn't brush hers. I wanted to reach out to bridge that small gap, but my hands froze in my lap. She stirred her tea slowly, avoiding my gaze, then finally looked up. Her eyes caught mine. A flicker, hesitation, something unspoken. She shifted closer, and I could feel the warmth radiating from her. My chest tightened. We laughed softly over some insignificant joke, leaning toward each other without realizing it. Her hand brushed mine, brief, accidental, electric. I swallowed hard, the world narrowing to that one fleeting touch. I could feel it, the pull, the risk, the forbidden closeness, but then my mind screamed caution. This was dangerous. And yet, I leaned in. She leaned too. Almost. Our faces were inches apart. Her breath hit my cheek. I could feel the heartbeat in her neck, the warmth of her skin, the faint scent of jasmine and cinnamon. And then, the moment hung there. Unfinished. Unclaimed. I didn't know if she'd pull back, or if I would. All I knew was that I couldn't move. And neither did she. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, painting the sidewalk in long, golden streaks. I walked beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance, though my chest felt tight with every step. We didn't need words. Our silence carried its own rhythm, but the quiet made everything else sharper. The curve of her shoulder, the way her hair caught the light, the faint perfume she always wore. She stopped at a bench by the small park near Daniel's house. Sat down, patting the spot beside her. I hesitated before joining, hands folded in my lap, aware of how close I was and how wrong it might feel to be here. "You didn't answer my text this morning," she said quietly, almost distracted, like she wasn't really asking but just observing. I was busy," I mumbled. Her eyes lingered on mine longer than usual, or maybe avoiding it. She whispered, voice low, almost trembling. Something in her tone made my chest clench. I wanted to tell her everything, that I couldn't stop thinking about her, about these stolen moments, but I didn't. I only looked down, fumbling with the edge of my hoodie, trying to steady my nerves. She laughed softly, but there was a catch to it, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. I can't pretend this isn't complicated," she admitted, tracing a finger along the edge of the bench. "I know what I'm doing is risky. And yet, I keep hoping." Her words hung between us, raw, unpolished. I swallowed hard, feeling the pull of her honesty. I think about it too," I said finally, my voice breaking a little. "More than I should. And I hate that I do." She turned to me fully, the sunlight catching in her eyes, revealing something fragile and dangerous. "You know, it's not just me," she said softly. I can't just stop. And I know how wrong it feels. And yet, every time you're here, I feel alive in a way I haven't in years." My stomach twisted. I wanted to reach for her hand, to close the distance completely, but my mind screamed caution. Daniel's laugh in the yard next door, the thought of crossing a line that couldn't be undone. Still, I felt it. Her nearness, her unspoken desire. Every small movement between us held meaning. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her shoulder brushed mine, the pause in her breath when I laughed quietly at something she said. I wanted to confess everything, to admit that I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, that I had imagined us leaning closer until there was no space left between. But the words caught in my throat. She shifted slightly, closer than before, and I could feel her warmth, smell the faint hint of jasmine on her coat. The bench seemed impossibly small. And then she looked at me, really looked, eyes searching mine, lips parted just a fraction, like she was on the edge of saying something irreversible. I didn't know if she wanted me to speak first, or if she was waiting for me to make a choice I wasn't sure I could. The world around us seemed to stop. The birds, the distant traffic, the faint sound of Daniel calling inside. All muted. She breathed in slowly, and my own breath caught. And then she asked the question without words. "Do you want this as much as I do?" I walked past her house that Thursday evening and froze. The porch light was off. No soft glow from the living room. No smell of vanilla or cinnamon drifting into the air. My chest tightened in a way I didn't expect. I tried calling her, but the phone went straight to voicemail. I waited in my car a few minutes, half hoping she'd appear at the door with that faint smile, some casual excuse for her absence. But she didn't. The next day, I sent a message. Just a simple, careful check-in. No reply. Hours passed. I opened the text over and over, rereading the words I'd typed and deleting them again, wondering if I'd said too much or too little. When she finally reached out, it was different. A short, clipped message. Can't meet this week. Things are complicated. No explanation. No hint of warmth. My mind spiraled. Was it Daniel? Someone seeing us? Or was it something deeper? Something I didn't know about? I try not to obsess, try to focus on my own routines, but the silence weighed. I imagined her at the kitchen table, staring at her phone the way I did, waiting for something she wasn't going to send. Later that week, I saw her at the grocery store just by chance. She moved quickly through the aisles, basket swinging, avoiding my eyes. She nodded once, stiffly, but there was no smile, no warmth in the gesture. Just distance. I couldn't stop myself. I followed at a polite distance, hoping for a conversation, a hint that this wasn't real, that we weren't drifting apart. Then I caught sight of someone else, a man, leaning close to her, hand brushing hers lightly. My stomach lurched. The casual ease between them, the way she laughed softly, the way her body relaxed into his presence. It wasn't Daniel. He was younger, maybe late 20s, but he carried a familiarity that made my chest tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. I walked away before she could see me, my mind a tangle of hope and despair. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it meant everything. I didn't know, and I couldn't ask. That night, I sat on my bed, phone in hand, staring at her number. I typed a message. Backspaced. Typed it again. Are you okay? I miss you. Deleted. Typed a different one. Deleted. I didn't send any of them. I imagined what she was feeling. Conflicted. Torn. Maybe guilty. Maybe relieved. Maybe moving on. I couldn't know, and the ambiguity was worse than any truth. Thursday came again. I stopped by the cafe out of habit, ordered my black coffee, and sat by the window like I always did. The seat across from me remained empty. Her presence lingered in my mind. The warmth, the laughter, the stolen moments, but the space she used to occupy wasn't there. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. I stared out the window, coffee cooling, and wondered if she'd ever walk through that door again. I found her in the kitchen that evening. The lights were low, a single lamp casting a soft glow over the counter. She was leaning against it, absent-mindedly stirring a mug of tea, eyes distant. I stopped in the doorway for a long moment, trying to decide if I should leave, pretend I hadn't come, retreat to the safety of my silence. But something in her posture, slightly hunched, a line of tension in her shoulders, pulled me forward. I didn't know if you'd come, she said quietly, not looking at me. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. My voice felt small in the space between us. I shifted from foot to foot, hands buried in my pockets. I didn't want to, I stopped. The words caught. Too many warnings. Too many reasons to hold back. She finally turned, and her gaze met mine. There was no pretense now, no mask of casual composure. Just someone who had been carrying the weight of the same feelings I had, just as uncertain, just as raw. I've been afraid, she confessed, voice low, of messing this up, of hurting anyone, of losing everything. I swallowed. My chest felt tight. Me too. I stepped closer, hesitant, aware of the distance still between us. I think about you, more than I should, and I don't. I don't want to step back anymore. Her hands clenched the mug, knuckles whitening, then relaxed. It's not just about wanting it, she said softly. It's about what we risk. Your friendship with Daniel. Everything. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel the same. We sat in silence for a long moment. I imagined the consequences, the disapproval, the impossible logistics, the quiet guilt, and yet none of it mattered as much as this moment. I realized the cost of vulnerability wasn't just fear, it was everything we might lose if we didn't take it seriously, if we didn't choose carefully. I can't promise it'll be simple, I said, voice shaking slightly. But I want to try. If you do. Her eyes softened. She set the mug down, reaching a hand toward mine. It hovered for a second, tentative, then touched my fingers lightly, a simple connection that felt heavier than any words. I want that too, she said quietly. I smiled, careful and small, but it felt like letting a breath escape after holding it too long. She returned it with her own, a mirrored expression of relief and uncertainty. For a moment, nothing else existed. The lampshade glow, the lingering warmth of tea, the quiet hum of the street outside, it all faded into the simplicity of being here together. And then she squeezed my hand, just a fraction, and whispered, "Okay." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The Thursday routine didn't end. It evolved. I still stopped by the cafe, ordered my black coffee at 8:47 a.m., and sat by the window, but now she joined me more often. Not always, never on a schedule, never with a rush of drama. Just quiet appearances, small smiles, shared glances that said more than words ever could. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, tea in hand, watching people hurry past outside. Other times, we talked in fragments about Daniel's homework, a book she'd finished, the way the light hit a street lamp just right. These moments weren't thrilling or forbidden anymore. They were ordinary and grounding, and I realized that was exactly what I wanted. We still navigated the edges carefully. Daniel sometimes came into the kitchen while she was cooking, and I would step back without thinking twice, letting space exist where it needed to. I didn't have to worry about grand gestures or declarations. We'd settled into something quieter, earned through patience and careful choice. I remember the first time we walked to the park and sat on the same bench where she'd confessed her fear. The sunlight hit differently that day, softer, warmer. I made my usual joke about the squirrels being secret agents, and she laughed, the sound familiar and comforting, carrying with it years of trust built between two people who knew each other better than anyone else. Life wasn't perfect. Work still tired me out. Her days were still full of obligations. But the edges of those routines felt softer now, shared. The quiet warmth between us was steady, like the subtle comfort of tea poured in the late afternoon, or the routine of a mug of black coffee waiting on the table at exactly 8:47 a.m. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me, just for a moment, not saying anything. And I'd realize she'd seen the same things I'd noticed long ago. The little habits, the pauses, the small flicks of expression that reveal more than words. We didn't need to speak to confirm it. We already knew. One evening, she set a cup of tea beside mine, hands brushing briefly, a soft connection that didn't need explanation. I watched the steam rise from the cups, warm and quiet, and thought about how far we'd come. Not from a moment of passion or drama, but from years of small choices, patience, and honesty. As I sipped the tea, she tilted her head toward me and smiled. A look that said she remembered everything. The bench, the cafe, the near misses, the pauses, the moments of hesitation. I smiled back because I did too. And for a second, we both just sat there, the world outside moving fast, while we held the slower, quieter pieces we'd built together. I didn't need to say it aloud. She understood. I understood. Some things like black coffee at 8:47 a.m. and the way she folds her napkin just so carry more meaning than words ever could. And that was enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?